In this video, I'm going to show you some crazy data. Tesla and EVs are already going through this deflationary period, but that's coming to the entire car market and it's coming soon. I'm going to show you how far new and used Teslas have dropped and other EVs. I'm going to show you how all used vehicles have a lot further to drop in price, just like Tesla. And I'm going to tell you when I think it's going to happen. New car supply is going way up, and that's going to affect the used car prices as well. An insane amount of borrowers have massive amounts of negative equity. They're completely underwater on their loans. It's not just with Tesla and EVs. What does this mean for the car market? Let's get to it. Let's start out with what I think is probably driving most of these problems, and that's what you're looking at here. The new vehicle inventory hits 80 days of supply. That was published just on February 15th. So just to give you an idea how crazy this is, the last time we had 80 days of supply was back in June of 2020. And we see sort of what you'd expect here. We see a lot of the domestic brands with a higher supply, and then brands like Toyota, Honda, Lexus, more sought after Japanese brands. They've had lower supply since the pandemic. And the reason why I wanted to start out showing you this graph of new cars is because it directly affects the prices of used cars. And as you can see here from this used car listing that shows price decreases, even Lexus in the past 30 days is down 2.8% in the used car market. Model 3 is down 7.7%, Volvo down 2.7%. So it just shows that new car inventory and new car price adjustment and incentives is starting to affect the used car market. And that leads into this graph, which is the used car price index kind of across all brands on Car Gurus. If you look at the start date, it's around 2019, and it shows your start of 22,349. And if you look at today, we are still up 24.27% over the start date of 2019. So we still have 15 to 20% to fall. It really is going to depend on new car pricing and kind of how the market shakes out this year. But I'll give you my prediction on how fast I think it's going to fall. Okay, now that we have kind of a picture of the new and used car market, let's look at Tesla. In August of 2022, this is the used side of Tesla, 67,641. And if you look at today, we're at 33,791. That is a 50% drop in all Tesla models over that time period from 2022. That's crazy. And I feel bad for anybody that bought in that time, but I think all the signs were clearly there. So if you bought a car, then you knew that you were paying over MSRP. And even if we take this data back a little bit further, even back in 2019, Tesla was at 56,000. And today, that's still a 38% decrease back from 2019. So it's not just people that have bought in the last year or two. This is a long time. And as you can see from this graph, this is the new pricing for Tesla and how much it's dropped from September 2022 to September 2023. This is the reason why all of those used car prices for Tesla went down 50%. That's a huge drop in a year. And obviously that is going to affect the used car market for Tesla. And not only Tesla, but all EV makers, because they're kind of regarded as the best EV. They pioneered the market. Now let's move on quickly to Ford and discuss their EVs. It looks like, at least from Ford's website, they claim that they sold 72,608 EVs, and they say that percentage is up 18%. So when you read these headlines from a company like Ford, you kind of have to understand where they're coming from. They're not really in the position that Tesla's in. So this says Ford electric vehicles posted record Q4 sales to cap off a record EV year. Ford sold 25,937 EVs in Q4, up 24% over Q3 sales. Companies like this like to use percentages when they're starting from a really low value, right? It's easy to say, well, I have 50% more sales if I started at a really low value. Compared to someone like Tesla, Tesla sold 1.8 million all EVs. So when you compare 25,000 EVs from Ford to Tesla's 1.8 million, they're not even in the same ballpark. Ford actually sold more hybrids. They sold 37,229 hybrids, which is up 55%. I actually think it's a much better strategy. Toyota's doing that too. And you use a lot smaller battery. You just have the benefit of better gas mileage. And I think it's a better solution than a full EV vehicle without an internal combustion engine. And if you look at this article, they said that Ford started out the year with a slight increase in sales because they had more hybrid sales to offset, but they actually had an 11% decline in all electric vehicles. And General Motors is kind of in the same boat as Ford. I think they sold a little bit more than Ford did in 2023, but look at this article. only 75,883 EVs were sold or delivered by GM. I think that's also fleet vehicles. It amounts to less than 3% of the company's overall sales. The company has yet to make a profit from its EV venture. That's crazy. So with everything that goes on with subsidies from the government and all these other programs for people to have incentive to buy these cars, they still aren't making profit from them. This is crazy. And all of the signals from buyers are saying that, hey, we don't want straight e-vehicles, at least not yet. And when people like the Toyota chairman claim that electric cars are never going to dominate the market, he claims that hybrids are a better option. He states that the EVs, true EVs, will only ever have 30% of the market share. I somewhat agree with him. I don't see EVs taking over the market, not completely. I think hybrids and what Toyota's doing is a much better bridge to get to a more sustainable car, whether it's hydrogen and hybrids plus hydrogen cars or whatever path this takes us on. And I'm not alone in these thoughts. You know, when you think about it, this article kind of shows why people are steering away from EVs. The charging is expensive. If you actually go to a supercharger, I believe it costs about the same as what gasoline costs, unless you're charging at your house. It's inconvenient, so it takes a lot longer to charge your car than it does to fill a tank of gas. If you're going on a long trip, you might sit for 45 minutes or an hour charging your car. That's just not convenient compared to a 5 or 10 minute fill up with your gas. Depreciation, as we already covered with Tesla. Range anxiety, obviously, people get a little freaked out. I know I'd be freaked out if I had to go on a long trip. The United States is a huge geographical area. We go on trips all the time that are 300, 400, 500 miles, and you don't want to have that anxiety. Hybrids are more popular. Also, it's very difficult to make a big EV vehicle, and it takes a lot larger battery for something like a truck or an SUV. Me personally, if I want to tow a boat or tow my camper, haul 8 people in a vehicle, an electric vehicle right now can't do that efficiently. If I take my vehicle up the mountains and down the mountains, I have to plan that entire trip out. We have to plan out an hour or two of charging, and it just doesn't make any sense compared to using a petrol vehicle for now. So wrapping up the EV theme, I think EVs are actually going to crash more than the general market. I think ICE vehicles are going to hold up a little bit better this year. EVs are going to continue to crash, and Tesla's going to continue to put pressure on all the other manufacturers by dropping their price of new vehicles. And that brings us kind of full circle to what I think is going to be the biggest problem, at least in 2024, 2025, which is the kind of subprime auto loan delinquency problem or crisis. If you look at this graph, the percentage of borrowers 60 days past due on their auto loans has reached the highest level since 1996. That's almost 30 years. And of course, they say what primary reason behind this is the high vehicle prices and high interest rates, but there's no way to get out of it. They're in now a negative equity crisis. It's something that's very difficult to get out of. If you paid over MSRP for a car and your car loan's got a huge interest rate, you can't just pass that off to someone else and have them take over your loan. And you can't also sell your car or trade it in, because the average negative equity for a car loan is $6,054. And that's mostly due to the transaction prices going so high in the last couple of years. And then the icing on the cake is a ton of these people have really long loan lengths. Like, you remember when we used to have 60-month, 72-month loans. Those seemed high for cars. Now I hear of people doing 84-month and 96-month loans on cars. And the only reason they can do that or they have to do that is because the car prices are so high and they have to come down. Americans just can't afford it. And this is why when I drive around, I see all these new cars. It feels like everybody's driving a car that's made within the past 3 to 5 years. And then I read stuff like this from the Census Bureau, and the median household income was $74,580 in 2022. I just wonder how overextended Americans are with their cars. And I think way too overextended, and we're going to see a huge crisis coming up. You already see repossessions going higher. Okay, now let's come back to that prediction that I told you I was going to make in the beginning of the video. I think that used car prices are probably going to creep down another, I'd say 10 to 15% over the next 3 to 4 months. So I think they're going to continue to go down, even with tax refunds. That might sustain it a little bit longer, but I'm not convinced that we're going to get back down used car prices back down to what they were pre-2020. For a long time, we had a sustained period where the used car index was around 23,000. And I just don't know if we're going to get back to that. And the main reason is so many cars over the past 2 or 3 years have been sold at such a high rate, probably 20 to 25% over what they used to be sold for. I just don't know that everything can fall back down to the rate it was, 3 or 4 years ago. As long as new car prices stay that high, even with incentives, I think we're still going to see a maybe 5 to 10% increase in just the used car average, maybe even for the next 3 to 5 years, unless the entire economy just implodes. So let me know in the comments below. I want to hear what you guys think is going to happen to Tesla and the EV market. I want to see what you guys think about my prediction. Do you think it's going to be like 10 to 15% by summer for used cars, or do you think it's going to be more or less than that? Hopefully you're not someone out there with a ton of negative equity, but what do you think is going to happen with the car loan crisis that's coming up? Do you think it's going to get worse? Do you think it's going to keep prices inflated, or is it all just going to blow up in a glorious ball of flames? Thanks for watching, and if you like this one, well, you might be interested in this one as well.